And I'll give you a couple tools that you can use at the end of this video that will be beautiful for a full moon ritual or a little full moon ceremony that you can host by yourself for yourself. Welcome back, my YouTube goddess. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Erica Hepperly, your women's lifestyle elevation and business coach. And I'm here to help you turn your pain into your purpose, help you find freedom and liberation within your mind, within your body, and within your soul. And today we are going to talk about the power of the full moon. This full moon is in Aries and is also known as the hunter moon. And as we move into the darker seasons, the more winter seasons of the year, this is a time to really work on shadow work, really work on diving into those spaces that you've maybe been neglecting, running from, hiding from. It's a time to really harness your emotions. And with every full moon, it's a beautiful time to celebrate all that you have achieved from the time the new moon started until this full moon. And the full moon is also a time to allow what is no longer serving you to die off, to release those things that are standing in your way from achieving your goals, from achieving self-love, the life that you're dreaming of, but also that's blocking you from dropping into the essence of who you came here to be. That's blocking you from standing in your truth, standing as a sovereign being, and allowing yourself to sink into faith rather than fear. So it's a beautiful time to die off those things you are afraid of, those things that have been holding you back, and really allow yourself to open up to new possibilities as we step from the full moon back into a new moon cycle. And so with that, I really want to speak about something that's come up for me to die off. And I think this is a beautiful topic to sink into. I'm not an astrologer, so I'm not going to go into the depths of the full moon. It is a full moon in Aries. It is the hunter moon. And it's just a beautiful time to release, to let go of all that is no longer serving you. And as well as the full moon, it's a beautiful time to sync your cycle to the moon cycle in itself. And the ultimate goal is to get your bleeding phase to be along the lines of the full moon. Because when you think of your bleeding phase or your period in the grand scheme of your menstrual cycle, that is your inner winter. That is a time when we want to honor ourselves, when we want to come back home, when we want to slow down, when we want to listen to the wise woman. We want to listen to that inner archetype of the wise old lady, the one that's been through an entire month of learnings, the one that's executed an entire month of wisdom, learnings, understandings, creativity, play, flirtation with life, and to be able to reflect from that month what served us and what we also get to get rid of and to release. And so when you think about the physicality of your bleeding phase, it's the whole process of getting ready to birth a child, right? And when it comes into the bleeding phase, we realize that there is no child there to birth, and we bleed or let go of the blood that is accumulated in the uterus. And so we can think of this blood as the stuff that is no longer serving us. And so we get to shed the thing, the ways of being that are no longer serving us in correlation to our bleeding phase. And so through society, it's been shown that our bleeding phase is disgusting. There's birth control to stop it, right? And while birth control can be beneficial to preventing pregnancy, it's also overprescribed. And it's also used as a Band-Aid to put on top of the irregular menstrual cycles, a screaming womb that needs attention, to an imbalance in our endocrine system, our hormonal system. And so when you can see all of this as so beautiful, you get to have the discernment and the sovereignty to decide whether or not you're going to use birth control and why it's being prescribed. You get to question, you get to, again, govern yourself. Self-governing is sovereignty. And so with this is a really powerful month for me specifically because I finally have achieved synced, I should say, my cycle to the full moon. So there's been a really powerful shedding phase for me, and I've been really having to listen and slow down and to not push and force myself into creation. So I've spent the past couple days as I was preparing for this full moon to share with you, or I should say, to shed all that is no longer serving me, the things that are keeping me stuck, the things that are keeping me sticky, the things that are not allowing me to move forward in that highest expression of myself. And so one thing I want to speak about is this fear of intimacy. And the fear of intimacy can be a challenge for a lot of people, right? Intimacy meaning allowing the closeness or proximity to either yourself or someone else, and allowing yourself or someone else to see you in your rawest expression, to see you in your messiness, to see you in your vulnerabilities, right? To see you for you without your masks, without the hidings, without your protection mechanisms, to see your darkness, right? That's what full-blown intimacy gets to be. And so when I was thinking about this journey I've been on with dating, with growing my business, with stepping into a CEO role out of a solopreneur role, I've started to see these shadow sides come up. And while I'm here working on calling in the divine masculine partner, I've been in this massive exploration phase where I get to see what I am here to allow and what I am here to not allow or to let go of. And so through this process, it's been over the course of the last few months, I've really started to see myself slip into these old patterns, into these old sticky points. And so from there, I really started to realize that the lack of intimacy I was receiving from the masculine was actually a lack of intimacy I wasn't allowing within myself. And so I found that I was chasing these men who were emotionally unavailable because the chase equated to the fact that I didn't have to open myself up to intimacy. And this was mind-blowing because I started to realize that it's not that I am not worthy of receiving love, which has been my story this entire time up to this point in my life, that I'm only capable of half a man's heart. It's actually the fact that I am fucking scared of the deepest intimacy because I know how far I can go. And if there's someone else that can meet me there, that could be massively, massively scary, right? But also so fucking beautiful. And then I no longer have to live in this story. And so through the course of the past, I would say a couple months, I realized that my chasing and this fear of intimacy go hand in hand. So I'd rather chase because I know that I wouldn't have to commit. And as I started to dig deeper into the shadow work and do the voice dialogue, I realized that one, I have seen this show up with my mother, with my grandmother, right? It's a generational wound that I am here to break, that I don't have to continue to live by, but I have to show up and do the work in order for me to change this story. And I think the first step of changing your story starts with realizing you are not your story, that you don't have to live by this story. And then came this fear that I never knew was even there. This fear that I actually am so afraid to end up alone, while I'm so beautifully, perfectly being alone right now, I have this subconscious understanding that I'm going to end up with someone in the future. So I'm okay right now. But when I was on a beautiful mushroom journey a couple weekends ago, I came face to face with this massively, deeply rooted fear of ending up alone, because I've seen it happen in my family from generation to generation. And I've seen how they've had this same pattern. But when I started to dig deeper into these shadows, I started to realize that the pattern stemmed from this lack of intimacy within themselves. And so if I can just get to the root of creating this deeper, more powerfully connected, seen in my messiness, seen in my truth, seeing my shadows, intimacy with myself, that there would no way be that I would be afraid of being alone. And the fear that comes from being alone for the rest of my life comes from the fact that I'll be alone and not know who I am, not know what makes me excited, what lights my soul on fire. And so I've been really practicing these techniques to open myself up deeper to intimacy. And again, it starts with understanding, one, you are not your story. You have to understand that, because if we keep living through that story, we're going to keep living through what we call confirmation bias. And confirmation bias shares and shows us that we're going to seek out or look for experiences that confirm our story. And so when I keep looking for or finding these men that are emotionally unavailable, or that can't meet me at the emotional depths that my soul is longing for, or I become the other woman, someone gets picked over me, I get left, right? It's because I am choosing to attract those type of partners because it confirms my story that I am only capable of half a man's heart, half a man's love. And so when I can realize that I'm not my story, and I can move past the confirmation bias, I can then start to create this deep personal intimacy with myself. And I want to share with you a couple different practices that you can use to create personal intimacy that have been really powerful for me lately. Is number one, mirror work. Mirror work is going to be so powerful, and I've found it to be the most powerful because you're face to face with you. You're creating that deep intimacy with eye gazing at yourself through the mirror. You can't go anywhere. You can't distract yourself with anything, right? You can't run from anything because you're face to face with you. And so with mirror work, it starts to be really powerful because you get to see you. Then you get to see past the layers of who you think you are. And then you get to meet the truth of who you are. And then you get to meet the little girl or boy within you, if you're a male watching this. And then you get to understand why you do the things you do. And in that, you get to then come face to face with your emotions and realize that they are maybe being ran from, you're distracting yourself from feeling them. You've been afraid to feel them. You've been running from them, right? And you get to start to create this personal intimacy with your emotions. And then from there, another deep-rooted, powerful technique to create that personal intimacy is going to be connecting centrally to your body. So I like to say maybe body oiling, sensual body oiling. So take the time after you get out of the shower to take the time to get intimate with each portion of your body. Because when you can start to create that safety in your body, then you're going to be able to do the work like inner child work and shadow work, right? So mirror work and sensual body oiling, two really powerful practices to create that deep personal intimacy with yourself. Number 3 is going to be just define where your distraction mechanisms come in. I've realized recently that I distract myself through scrolling, through self-pleasure, through sometimes eating. I've moved past that, but that could be another mechanism that you use. And through doing a million things at once rather than focusing on one specific thing. because then my mind doesn't have to face what I'm actually truly feeling, because I'm so focused on moving back and forth to so many different tasks. And then I end up getting frustrated because nothing gets done. And then number 4 is going to be, coming face to face with your inner child, starting to create that intimate relationship. And if you already created it, maybe you've neglected it. For me, I've created an intimate relationship with my inner child years ago, about 5 years ago. But there's times when I start to neglect her and I start to run off of this programming, societal programming that I was taught: hustle, success, prove myself, all of that stuff, right? So from there is really understanding what is coming up for the little child within. And mine was this personal neglect. And I kept finding myself in these quote unquote self-sabotaging behaviors when it came to business and when it came to men, because I was actually neglecting myself. And so the little child, the little girl within me, really truly believed that if I am to step into a deeper place of success, into a role where there's more responsibility, and when I'm here to then give to a partner or share an intimate relationship with a partner, she is going to feel neglected, to feel left out. So it's really important to her that I spend the time being with myself, being with my emotions, being present, right? Acknowledging my shadows. And from there, right, it allows you to then understand what she's needing, wanting, and desiring. And you can come back home to that intimacy within yourself. And last would be doing the shadow work, right? I guess that's not the last, but the next would be doing the shadow work, understanding where you're maybe protecting yourself, understanding where your sub-personalities that are living within your ego are running your world, right? So is there a place where, for me, I realized that all of this neglect, this personal neglect, was just a protection mechanism. So I didn't lose myself, but at the end, I had to acknowledge that in order to come back home. And so when you can do the shadow work or the voice dialogue, you can really start to see that, wow, okay, there is these things I'm running from. There's these things I've been running from, hiding from, avoiding, and we can go face to face with those and start to see that our darkness is equally as beautiful. That these things that we're doing that we deem as annoying, or we shame them, or we guilt them, have actually been put in our world for a reason. They've been put here to keep us safe, to help us achieve love, to help us, feel protected, right? So we don't get hurt. And at the end of the day, they are here for such a powerful reason. And when you can learn to have a conversation with those, you can see how you can take the power back, and they get to have a new role rather than the role that's been blocking you from stepping into that higher version of yourself. And then the last, I guess, would be creating that pleasure in your life. So after you've created the safety, the emotional intimacy, the inner child work, the shadow work, you get to then step into a place of pleasure, balancing the masculine and feminine, right? And within the shadow work, you might have come to a face of maybe a wounded masculine or feminine. Now you get to dance between the both. You get to set up a sacred pleasure practice to be able to understand what you need, want, and desire. And I realize, as I've been in this exploration period with men, that a portion of me has honored my worthiness, right? By speaking my truth, by asking for what I need, want, and desire, for having the voice to say when I do and don't want something. But on the other side, there's been a portion of me that old patterns are creeping in, where I'm trying to connect to men who actually don't serve my highest being, who I actually know and understand that the feeling in my body isn't what I want to feel. The connection is something that I'm trying to fit a circle into a square. And so I get to understand that part of it is seeking this validation. And so you can go back to that shadow work, right? Why am I seeking this validation? Okay, because I wasn't actually giving it to myself. I wasn't taking the time to be intimately present with myself. And so then from there, you get to release what no longer serves you, and you get to step into the pleasure of what takes you to that highest version of yourself. And so then you can step into a sacred self-pleasure practice, right? I had said at one point in this video that my distraction mechanisms came from self-pleasure. It came from the self-pleasure of just getting off, where I can sink back into a sacred self-pleasure practice that allows me to intimately and deeply connect to myself, to know what I need, want, and desire when it comes to my sexuality, my sensuality, my pleasure. From there, you get to use your orgasm to manifest all you need, want, and desire. And it just becomes so beautiful. And so you can see that through this whole full moon is really important, and your bleeding phase is really important each month to go through this cycle and to always come back home to yourself, to shed those belief systems that no longer serve you, to do the shadow work, to alchemize that darkness into your being so you can step into that highest version of yourself. And so for this full moon, a couple things you can do for a full moon ritual, or even a bleeding phase ritual, which will help you to release the belief systems or the habits or behaviors or ways of thinking, ways of being that don't serve your highest good, even like the personality masks, all of that stuff. Will really be starting with setting a sacred space, really setting a space. Maybe that's clearing the energy through using sage or Palo Santo, lighting some incense and candles, maybe setting some binaural beats or some sound frequencies that connect to the chakras. And once you've had that sacred space set, one of my magical things, like I said before, is the mirror work, coming face to face with yourself, not logically thinking what you need to get rid of, but being intimately connected through eye gazing, through mirror gazing, to understand what it is that you're ready and willing to let go of, what's standing in your way. And once you've connected and you've asked yourself, what am I willing and ready to let go of, as you're staring into the mirror, maybe take about 5 to 10 minutes to do that mirror work, and allow whatever emotions that come up, whatever emotions surface, to move through you. And so from there, I always like to say, maybe asking yourself, what have I been avoiding, right? What am I willing to let go of? What have I been avoiding? And through that, you'll listen to those first inner whispers. You'll listen to those first downloads that come through, because that's your intuition pushing you towards what you get to get rid of and let go of. And then from there, you get to somatically move those emotions through your body, whether that's through yelling, crying, screaming, dancing, twerking, shaking. Allow the emotions to move through your body, because yes, we can write down for days what it is you want to release, and we can burn it in a bowl and it's all good. But if it's still living in your body, that's not going to do well. So somatically move those emotions through your body. If no emotions are coming up, I always like to say just to stare at your third eye, eyes to eyes in the mirror. You can also use a pillow to scream into. That should start to stir some emotions up. You can also massage through your chest, through your heart space, a breast massage that will allow you to open up your heart space and to let go of those emotions. Once you've done that, I would say to go ahead and write down what you're releasing on a piece of paper. Then you can go ahead and burn that piece of paper by speaking out loud what you're letting go of, because that's going to activate vocally, moving again somatically through your body, what you're ready and willing to release. As you see that piece of paper burn, you'll drop it into a bowl of water, and you'll say, and so it is, right? Once you've said, and so it is, as you've released each one of those, at your final end, you get to then insert pleasure. Inserting pleasure through dancing, through singing, through self-pleasure, sacred self-pleasure practice, really intimately connecting to your body and claiming what you're going to replace instead of what you were doing before. So what you've released, what you're not wanting, and within that area, you get to replace what you want to put in that position instead. So if I'm wanting to replace self-neglect, I'm wanting to get rid of self-neglect, I'm going to replace it with 10 minutes a day eye gazing, right? So now I'm no longer running from my emotions. I'm face to face with my darkness, with my emotions, with my being, right? If I'm wanting to find more time in the day, I'm going to replace it with creating safety in my body, Why? Because a lot of times when you don't have enough time in the day, it's because you're dissociated. You're trying to do 1,000 things at once rather than focusing and being safe in doing that task. So that works for your moon cycle, for the full moon to shed. That also works with your bleeding cycle to let go of the darkness or the heaviness that you're physically shedding through bleeding. And there are a bunch of different bleeding rituals you can do. I highly recommend using a menstrual cup. And if that doesn't work for you, then I would say going to cotton tampons. Just make sure that you're not putting any toxins into your body during your menstrual cycle, or ever, really, to be honest. But for that, you can do something like giving your blood back to the soil. So basically taking from your menstrual cup, you can pour your blood back into the soil. You can also do something like a blood facial mask to use the nutrients from that to create this glow within your face. And there's so many other rituals that you can do that will help you to lock the release in and to let go of and give that energy back to Mama Gaia, Pachamama. And so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead, give me a thumbs up, comment below if there's something specifically you have a question about or you want to learn more about. And go ahead and don't forget to subscribe, because subscribing helps me help you. The more feedback I get, the more excited I am to do these videos. So thank you so much. Happy full moon, and I am sending you all of the love.